Shalom, good afternoon. It's a great honor to host here Professor Jonathan Gershoni, well-known professor and unique person. It's a great privilege to know you personally for a relatively long time. It's a great privilege for me. I'm enjoying your wisdom and your character and your personality. You are an inspiring person. Professor Jonathan Gershoni is a graduate of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. He postdoced 3 years at the Yale School of Medicine, was appointed professor of biophysics at the Weizmann Institute, joined the National Institute of Health, the NIS, in Bethesda, United States, and in 1990 moved back to Israel. We are lucky, to Tel Aviv University, where he has been ever since. Professor Gershoni, welcome to this studio. And we are going to focus on the strategic, it looks like strategic threats, what's happening in the leading universities in the United States. We are very worried in Israel. I'm very worried and shocked personally. And we would like to share with you, or you share with us, what is your perspective about this issue?
First of all, the honor is mine to be interviewed by General Gilad. Thank you very much for having me. A personal word before we actually get into it. My dad was a graduate of MIT. He was a naval architect. And after World War II, serving as a lieutenant in the U.S. Navy, he then moved to Israel in the War of Independence. And that gave me the opportunity to be born in Israel. And in fact, my wife was born in Israel. My 3 daughters were born in Jerusalem. And my 9 out of 10 grandchildren were born in Israel as well. So although my English is a bit misleading, I'm a genuine Israeli. Regarding my perspective of what's going on campuses, so let me first share the fact that for the last 50 years, I've been in academia and in many campuses. I've had, as you mentioned, the opportunity to be at Yale. I spent time at Harvard. In 1978, I spent a number of months working at the biolabs at 16 Divinity Avenue in Harvard. On a daily basis, I used to salute John Harvard at Harvard Square. And I felt not only inspired, but genuinely privileged to be at such an esteemed university, the symbol of the elite of American academia. And I was very excited and honored. So in many respects, I feel that I have a good understanding of the campus. Generally speaking, I think one has to close your eyes for a moment and understand that the university campus is a place not only of higher learning, but scholarly research, in-depth analytical understanding of highly complex problems, and open to truthful, honest, fact-based debate, which can sometimes be quite lively and maybe loud. But this is what universities are all about. And so the events in the past months are not only very, very surprising, but very disturbing.
I've served decades in the military intelligence, and I remember the date of establishment of this terrible, disastrous organization, Hamas. And Hamas' goal is to destroy Israel without any compromise. The timetable is flexible. The goal is uniquely tough. And what they want, do they want? They want to destroy Israel. And that's why I have been shocked that 3 presidents of the most prestigious universities, at the top of the University of Harvard, the way you have just described them, are hesitating to denounce genocide and what the atrocities that have been made by Hamas are a reflection of genocide doctrine and clear orders by the leadership of Hamas to commit atrocities, to behead babies, to rape women, as a way to destroy Israel, to undermine the stability, destabilize Israel, and so on. With these strategies that reminding, in a way, the Nazis, they cannot denounce as leaders of the most prestigious universities such atrocities, and they are hesitating based on some recommendation by some lawyers. I'm considering it a strategic threat to Israel because the graduates of these universities will become tomorrow the secretaries of state, the senior diplomats, and maybe one of them will be president.
So, of course, it's unfortunately even worse than your perspective because this is not a grassroots event of youngsters who have been called to demonstrate on hundreds of U.S. campuses. This is a cynical, very well-structured, well-funded campaign that has been implemented pro-Hamas. There are a number of organizations, and first and foremost, Students for Justice in Palestine, the SJP, that a few days, literally immediately after the atrocities that you described on October 7th, came out with a toolkit, a roadmap. They actually published thousands of copies of a 5-page document called Day of Resistance Toolkit. And I would like to just read for a moment a few of the comments and instruction they gave so as to actually organize and create these rallies, these protests, which appeared innocent, but in fact they were not. The document starts with National Students for Justice in Palestine is calling for a national day of resistance on college campuses across occupied Turtle Island. That's the Hamas way of referring to the United States and Canada. This Thursday, October 12th, 2023. So this was immediate. And in the document, it goes in length in describing how to demonstrate and what to demonstrate. A few of the sentences, key sentences, is we must continue to resist directly through dismantling Zionism. When people are occupied, resistance is justified. Settlers are not civilians in the sense of international law because they are military assets used to ensure continued control over stolen Palestinian land. Resistance comes in all forms. All of it is legitimate, and all of it is necessary. And then they go through various instructions of how to organize a protest and messaging and hashtags and so on and so forth. Now, as a result, and this is what we all witnessed, there were hundreds of undergrads chanting passionately such slogans as there is only one solution, Intifada, revolution. And the other one, of course, is from river to sea, Palestine will be free. And unfortunately, this sinister campaign by SJP is manipulating and swaying young, naive, and unfortunately rather ignorant students into promoting and causing havoc on the U.S. campuses and then obviously in the minds of the general public. And I'm afraid to say that most of the kids on campus who are protesting, they would have very little able or ability to actually pinpoint Gaza on a map. And when you ask them, what river are we talking about? They have no idea. And more serious is the problem that they do not understand that a call from the river to the sea is a call for genocide of Jews and annihilating the state of Israel. I've heard some of the protesters actually say that from the river of the sea, Palestine will be free. This is the best way to have a two-state solution, Israel and Palestine in peace. So they obviously don't know what they're talking about. And as you said, this generation of young, naive people are the future's legislators and policymakers and so on and so forth. So the SJP has developed a campaign to cause havoc, chaos, and sway the attention from what is actually the atrocities of October 7th, which is outrageous.
You know, it's reminding me the Nazis didn't call publicly for extermination. They used to call it final solution. I mean, you are using terms that look legitimate while they are hiding conspiracy to exterminate the Jewish people. And these students don't understand what they are talking about, because what does it mean, as you say, free Palestine? How can you, as a graduate of these universities, as a person who is so much involved in the academic life of these prestigious universities, how can you explain the origins for this problem, and how it has become a surprising, shocking issue at stake?
Well, obviously, some of it stems from pure anti-Semitism, but I don't even want to go there because, frankly, anti-Semitism is not new. It isn't from the October 7th event. Some of it is truly shocking. If we take, for example, Professor Russell Rickford from Cornell, professor of history, he made a point of saying that when he saw the Hamas terrorists on October 7th, he found it energizing and exhilarating. And he made a point of saying, I was exhilarated. And so you ask yourself, this is the type of professor you want your students or children to learn history from? And so when you ask, where is it coming from? Some of it stems from faculty that believe that this was justified. And then, of course, one has to follow the money. How does one explain how such a well-organized and orchestrated response, where was the funding and the finance for it? So there are a number of explanations, two avenues of finance. The first is SJP, and SJP was funded specifically by the American Muslims for Palestine NGO. This is an offshoot of two previous NGOs that have been prohibited and declared as terrorist organizations, that they serve as a front for Hamas policies. And so SJP is directly funded and organized by AMP, the American, or the Association of Muslims for Palestine. This is one aspect. The other aspect is direct funding to the universities. And so we see that over the years, billions and billions of dollars have gone through from Qatar, from the UAE, from Saudi Arabia, but primarily Qatar, to American universities, and they are buying the power, the influence to actually manipulate what's going on campus. And so there have been a number of avenues. One has been to simply donate to the universities, and Qatar has opened up universities in Qatar of American branches, and thereby they have been integrated in the policy making or not. Now, of course, every president of a university, which we'll get to in a second, would claim that no, the professor, Dr. Gay, mentioned that there are a lot of alumni that are donating. But we know that Qatar is very, very pro-Hamas and has directly donated $1.8 billion to Cornell. And so we're talking about huge amounts of money, over $800 million over the years to Texas A&M. Columbia University has received a lot, as well as Harvard.
It seems it's very similar to what's happening here with the financing dimension of Hamastan by Qatar. Qatar used to support Muslim Brothers, and used to support Hamastan. Now we are paying a high price for our stupidity. That by some were evaluated and assessed very well in the past. But how can you explain this? President of Harvard looks to be one of the most important posts in the world. She is giving testimony, she is testifying in the Congress of United States of America. And she looks so cautious, based on lawyers. Why? Where are the great leaders of these universities? Used to be in the past. Where are they? How can you explain it, even from your personal, personally, how can you explain it? It's so embarrassing. I feel so embarrassed and shocked. I feel that we are facing here a dramatic failure by identifying the future risks of this phenomena.
Well, first of all, I have to admit that my first reaction, my first impression when I sat down to listen to the congressional hearings, I spent a good 5 hours listening to the testimonies. I thought that this was really a wow moment in history. 3 presidents of Harvard, UPenn, and MIT. Now, my dad, as I mentioned, was a graduate of MIT. He used to always tell me if I was at Yale, he would say, Yale's okay, but it isn't an MIT. So here I'm sitting and looking at the testimonies, and not only do I see 3 presidents of esteemed universities, these are 3 women, 3 Wonder Women. These are highly professional and achieved women who have reached the level of presidency of leading universities. And so I was all pumped up and ready to hear some sanity, some defense and explanation as to what's going on, and some comments and truth. And gradually, over the course of 4 hours, I saw a morphing, a transformation of these 3 Wonder Women into to 3 proverbial wise monkeys. Hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. Turn your look and do absolutely nothing. It was shameful. It was just unbelievable. The obsession of being politically correct when it isn't. It isn't correct. Trying to constantly balance. If there is some objection to anti-Semitism, well, let's balance that with protection against Islamophobia. Not everything is always balanced. And the gobbledygook, legalese, pre-scripted responses saying that the 3 presidents actually were constantly talking about the freedom of speech and freedom of expression, and that we rely on the Constitution. This has absolutely nothing to do with the situation. And so I was devastated. I really felt terrible. It was shameful. The smug arrogance of Dr. Gay, constantly saying that calls for genocide is a matter of context, and it depends. And this is outrageous. There is no but after the horrific, really unbelievable atrocities of October 7. And she's saying, well, genocide, it's a matter of context. Well, let me tell you that this is unacceptable, and the context throughout everything has to be maintained and understood. We have to keep our eye on the ball. We have to understand that everything here, the context, is October 7th, the atrocities, and there is absolutely no room to expect that freedom of speech is a get-out-of-jail-free pass. And therefore, people have to understand that the suffering and the tragedies that are ongoing now in Gaza stem directly from the atrocities of October 7 and the necessity for Israel to defend itself and to ensure that a replay of such a massacre would never happen. And there is a fundamental difference. Whereas the Hamas targeted civilians and took hostages, 250 or some hostages, from their homes, living peacefully, and massacring 1,200 people on October 7th. This is their strategy, as you said, to cause chaos and imbalance in the area, for their perception to generate a pan-Islamic state, like Al-Qaeda. And so here we have to remember that we're in the course of a war. We are defending ourselves. Israel, the IDF, has never targeted civilians. And unfortunately, this is the situation.
I would like to add by asking you, we need to draw lessons and to have recommendation, because this is fiasco from Israel's point of view. It's like neglecting strategic arena. So what are your lessons and recommendations?
Well, first of all, I really think that the university campus, the people there, the leadership, has to take a good look at themselves and realize that they have the responsibility to promote honest, fact-based analyses of what's going on. And clearly, I think that there has to be more awareness of following the money, because clearly as well, if one can quelch and prevent the funding and the activities, there are a number of action items. The SJP should not be allowed to act and have campaigns on campus. Columbia University has, in fact, thrown out the SJP, but Harvard has not. I think that the fact that the president of UPenn stepped down, too late, but stepped down, is reasonable and should be the case, as should be the case for both Harvard and MIT. There has to be better reporting, better understanding, better tracking of whose money is being given to the universities and how they can sway policies of the university. It has to be clearly understood that there isn't always room for a balance. And I think in many respects, this obsession of being in every situation politically correct is distorting and warping the academic activity of the universities, and this obviously then reflects on the society because everybody is very, very concerned, and the reputation of these universities has been hijacked by Hamas. And so people assume that if there is a demonstration on Harvard, well, Harvard is an esteemed university, there must be some credibility, and obviously not. So these are some of the conclusions one might draw.
I would like to share with you that I think it's a dramatic failure of our government, especially the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, that keeps failing in many areas that are essential to our strategic strengths. And if we don't draw lessons immediately, and I am not optimistic we will do it, and then shape some new policy vis-a-vis Qatar, vis-a-vis the hostile forces that are undermining our legitimacy, we might lose a lot in the future. The warning on the wall. Do you see similar demonstrations in Tel Aviv University or in your, let's say, faculty or whatever?
Well, first of all, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And I've asked to show a picture of my lab. Clearly,
can you explain what is your lab doing?
Yes, my lab, we are a small group. I'm a retired professor. And so we are conducting research on trying to understand the immune response to infectious diseases. And we've been working for many years. I started with rabies, but then subsequently moved on to HIV/AIDS, and we're currently working in addition to corona and dengue and flu. And the lab is a nice place with good people. As you can see, on the far left is Rima, and she is a local Arab master student, very bright and very skilled. And on the far right, Tihila is a very bright and talented young Israeli student as well, also very religious. And the two women share the same lab, the same bench, get along wonderfully, and pray to the same God. So clearly, we can live together and work together. Actually, my boss, Professor Azam, Abdul Salam Azam, he is an Israeli Arab, and he's my dean, and he's in charge of me. And so I think that Tel Aviv University campus is where I work, is an illustration that we can have certainly debate, and we do debate and we do discuss. 16% of our 30,000 student body are Arabs. And so we have a very peaceful campus, although I would agree that it's not always easy to be an Israeli Arab. But if you were to ask me, and I can only speak for myself, am I or are my colleagues Islamophobic? No. But we are Hamasophobic, and rightfully so.
That's a very inspiring message. Thank you very much, Professor Gershoni, for being with us and having the opportunity to talk with you about this serious strategic arena.
Thank you very much.